all over Medford, Oregon area, and maybe bigger areas, I don't know. So I said, well, why would I want to mention that to anybody? They're not in Medford necessarily, and if they are in Medford, they're seeing them for themselves. And he said, because you just might go off the air very suddenly. The lightning strikes in the right place. So remember, friends, if I go off the air, they'll play music or they'll do something else. Don't worry about it. But we don't want to miss Dr. Sky, whose real name is Steve Case. I said to Dr. Sky, what shall I call you? Steve, Dr. Sky? He said, oh, don't use my maiden name. Just call me Dr. Sky. So, Dr. Sky, welcome to Coast AM.
Good evening and good morning, Hilly, to you and all the listeners.
What are we doing with these darn, I realize you're not a weather forecaster or meteorologist, but how come we're having all these dumb lightning strikes in the Medford area?
Good question. I would imagine you're getting some of the Arizona monsoon pushed up northward, and as you probably know, and many of the listeners do, we suffer tremendously with the same problem here in Arizona through the months of June, July, and August. So let's hope we don't go off the air.
Monsoon? I thought that was something that happened in India.
Well, we have this weather little quirk that every so often we get Gulf moisture and also moisture from the Gulf of California, which moves northward, and we unfortunately get the bad weather, so to speak, like you're experiencing.
Sure, blame California. Everybody always does.
Well, there you go.
All right, but you did say it was perhaps on a monsoon moving up Oregon.
It's possible.
Anything's possible.
Absolutely.
The way the weather patterns have been, this probably, where I live in Monterey, California, probably the coldest summer I can remember.
Oh.
It's, while everybody else on the East Coast has been just sweltering, and most of the country for that matter, it is so darn cold here, which generally is in August anyway, but that's just the quirk of the weather here. But it was that way in June, it was that way in July.
You have the great fog monster, as I understand, that creeps up from the ocean there.
That's true. That's what happens. And I expect the great monster in August, not in June and July. That's when we have our good weather. So we'll see what happens.
I love the area you're in. Beautiful.
Come visit. Dr. Sky, I have to, I'm going to be out your way, by the way. What is it? A week from tomorrow I'm going there. Big UFO conference is in Mesquite, and that's right on the Arizona border.
Very close, sure.
Very close.
Love to join you.
Well, do come. I'll give you the details, and we can watch for UFOs together.
Absolutely. We'll have a fun time.
I will, but I do hope we're going to see UFOs. All right, let's get to business here.
Sure.
The strange thing that's going to happen on August 11th, which is Wednesday of this week.
That's correct.
Actually, isn't agreed. Is it more like Tuesday night? Because it's in Europe that they're going to see it at noon, for example, in London. So noon in London would be about, you count back from where I am, 8 hours. And that would make it about 4 in the morning, just about the time we go off the air here.
That is correct. And it's actually going to be early for all the listeners who certainly would like to see this live. We'll be mentioning how they can participate. But this will happen for all of us here in the States, so to speak, during the early mornings of Wednesday morning, the 11th. And it will be something quite spectacular. And I've been getting a lot of calls here, various people that, of course, I've been in contact with around the country, that are saying, well, you should tell everyone that this eclipse, in some measure, is actually visible along the east coast of the United States. And I had listened to Linda Moulton Howe's report yesterday or so, in which she's a very lucky individual, wouldn't you say?
She's in France.
Oh, absolutely. What a lovely place to be, to see this darkness. And really, I've seen 3 of these total eclipses in my time, and have traveled extensively to observe them. And we will be able to see this very partial for people in one city I'll pick out and highlight is, of course, New York City. When the sun rises at 2 a.m. on Wednesday morning, Eastern Daylight Time, the sun will actually be some 46% in this eclipse, making it rather dangerous to view. And I hope the media there is doing their job to tell everybody not to stare at the thing with the unaided eye, because that's a scare in itself. And I've seen a lot of people, and I've spoken with a lot of people, who have suffered some eye damage to partial phases.
As I understand, the damage doesn't come from the eclipse itself. It's when it starts to move and you're still looking at it, and all the rays of the sun come and hit your iris.
Absolutely. And there's a little area, not being an ophthalmologist, but in the central part of your eye called the fovea, in which that tiny little area, 1/100th of an inch in diameter, where you look and see and you have the capability to do your reading and such, that thermal burning of that area of the eye can cause the irreparable damage that we warn people about. And they may wonder, well, okay, Dr. Sky, what's the safe way to do it? The simplest way is to acquire this aluminized mylar film that all the nature-type stores and science museums are selling. And I know in Europe, they're probably sold out by now. And also anything higher than a number 14 welder's glass is technically safe because you want to protect your eyes from the ultraviolet and infrared rays that can damage the eyes. But it's a spectacular sight, Billy. The last time I saw this total solar eclipse was back in July of '91, standing on the big island of Hawaii, and through partly cloudy skies, Moon Shadow was there right there.
Well, I hope everybody has a good now let's get to your website, because it is run by the same guy who runs Art Bell's website, Keith Rowland.
Absolutely.
And as a result, it's one hell of a website.
Oh, thank you. You bet. And he's done a wonderful job, as we all know, and providing right now for all the listeners in all the time zones, current information on how they can partake in this particular eclipse coming up. And a wonderful thing, really, that I'm sure everybody who has a computer will be able to see, if you're not able to afford, like myself and many millions, to travel to the path of totality, you can link right up to the Dr. Sky website, the Art Bell website, and look at our live link, which we'll have, where you'll be able to see NASA's live link in going and looking at this eclipse right from your computer. And I did get a question the other day. Is it safe to view the partial phases on your computer? Believe it or not.
No, well, if you're wearing sunglasses,
I believe it's safe on the computer. And we're inviting all of the listeners in all the time zones, wherever we're heard right now, within the sound of our voices, to join us on the Dr. Sky website in unison. And you will get to experience, and I'm really serious about this, Hilly. This is, to me, one of the most sacred events that I can imagine in nature. That are in the middle of the day, the most eerie darkness occurs, where we see the shadow of the moon come literally racing from one other direction, about 1,500 miles an hour, and you get to see, for a fleeting few minutes, those in Europe get about 2 minutes and 23 seconds of totality. The longest totality that you can ever get is about 7 minutes and 31 seconds. That's by the book. This one, of course, is not the longest, but the last. Of the century, probably more people per square inch, per square mile, get to see this event.
And, it's doesn't seem to be as big a deal here as it is in other places. I'm reading now from your newsletter, okay? It says in England, thousands will descend on Cornwall, the area of first major landfall in the path of totality creeps near the famous Stonehenge. In France, the famous Orient Express will roll north to take eclipse watchers to a special concert at the famous Rennes Cathedral, with soprano Jessie Norman performing. A global Woodstock of sorts will be held in Zord, Hungary, around the eclipse week of August 11th. A special MiG-29 will be made to fly with a special camera on its wings to show this event to the gathering masses, just in case of cloud cover at the time of totality. And for the lucky few who can, a special concert will be held during the eclipse near Kogan Park in Romania, Transylvania, as Luciano Pavarotti sings. Wow!
Isn't that amazing?
What amazes me is it's such a big deal so many other places. Of course, they're in the path of totality, and that does make a difference.
Absolutely. And it's a very narrow band, as we know. And if you're a beginner to the science of astronomy, it's one of the most wonderful events, a very rare event. And doing some research on this for the program, I've come to conclude the average town sees one of these type of total solar eclipses for repetition once every 410 years. That's the average of averages. In certain cases, that may be a lower number, and in some odd cases, a higher number.
Not sure I'll be there for that one. What are we going to see on the West Coast?
Well, nothing at all. I mean,
thanks a lot.
Isn't that unfortunate?
Unless we look at your website.
Absolutely. And the last time we had a total solar eclipse here in the States was February 26, 1979. And the next great one that we're going to see here in the United States will be August the 21st of 2017, a big 38-year gap in totality. And those eclipses will go through some fairly large major cities of the United States. I believe the one in August, year 2017, actually goes through where you are, or the folks at the Air Radio Network in Oregon, heading east across the United States.
Wow. All right, Dr. Sky, we want to take a break here, and then we want to talk about all the planet alignments. That's something else we haven't touched. And the thousands of new comets we're going to see, and the meteor showers. And wow, we got a lot of ground to cover. So you stay right there, please, and we'll continue on Coast to Coast AM. I am Billy Rose, sitting in for Art Bell. Oh, well. Let's move along here. And my guest is Dr. Sky out of Arizona. And Dr. Sky, there's so many more things we want to talk about here, so let's get to them quickly. One of the things is there's a planetary alignment. And again, you're not an astrologer, but you are a man who looks in the sky. Isn't that this week also?
Yeah, it's actually, from the world of astrology, we find out a grand cross conjunction consisting of the Sun, Venus, and Mercury in the sign of Leo, Mars and the Moon in Scorpio, with Pluto close by in the constellation Sagittarius, Saturn and Jupiter in Taurus, Neptune and Uranus in Aquarius. And from the world of astrology, obviously, this would have great significance coming on the heels of this particular eclipse that we're going to see. Wonderful series of events to really spark interest in keeping, as I always say to my television audience and all the friends around listening on radio, always keep your eyes to the skies, because there's so much to see and so much to learn. But there's a lot of other strange things that are going on. And I know we were speaking earlier, before we came on the air, about some of the possibilities of comets that can slip through during the eclipse. As many comets have been observed during the moment of totality, that astronomers in the past were totally unaware of, building up to the big event of millions and millions of comets coming out from a large cloud that surrounds our solar system called the Oort cloud, in which there are literally billions of these frozen embryos, as I like to call them, of cosmic debris, that every so often, due to the gravity of the stars, they get pulled toward the sun.
You're telling me that there are comets there that nobody has seen before that we may now see, and they could be comets that possibly could be dangerous to us?
It's hypothetical. I mean, we're seeing that there are stars out there. Our closest stellar neighbor, other than, of course, our own sun, is actually the star Proxima Centauri. And if we look at some of the other stars, like Sirius, the brightest star in the nighttime sky, as the Earth and the Sun and these closer together, the potential exists, as astronomers say, particular astronomers here at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, that over the course of millions of years, this phenomenon would be in full force. But the point is, where do the comets come from anyway? They come from this cloud, and yes, that's correct, Billy. There are literally maybe millions and billions of these frozen embryonic comets, which are actually the creation debris from the solar system that could come earthward, and naturally, most definitely, come sunward. As we've seen in the past, we've watched over the last 2 years the propensity of seeing some magnificent comets. Back in '97, the great Yakutaki or Hyakutake, however you pronounce it, or Hale-Bopp. And that's unprecedented. I've never seen a comet in my day that was so spectacular as the Hyakutake or Yakutake comet back on March the 27th of 1997 out in the Arizona desert, stretching 80 degrees across the sky. It's almost literally, almost halfway across the sky. So maybe many things will be taking.
Aren't we also going to have the, I don't know how to pronounce this, the Perseid meteor shower?
Perseid meteor shower.
Is that this week also?
Yes, and for all those who are listening right now, if you're in a dark area where you can go out and look into the northeast, between now as we speak, and the big buildup will occur on the 12th, that is the early hours of August the 12th. Lots of information going on in the sky this week. The eclipse, the meteor shower, the Grand Cross, and the astrology connection for the alignment of planets. And of course, the message of an object that you tried to allude to before is the Cassini spacecraft on August the 18th. It passes within about 700 miles above the Earth.
Oh, that's a week from now then.
Yeah, that's August the 18th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that will pass by.
Mm-hmm.
But with the Perseids, here's another interesting thing. Everyone in the United States gets to see this. All you do is look into the northeast, on any clear night starting after local time, about 11 p.m. And if you look high into the northeast and follow a grouping of stars, easy to see, they're to the right of a W-shaped constellation called Cassiopeia. You'll see this mythological hero, the constellation or grouping of stars, called Perseus, and that's where these meteors are coming firing out like out of the barrel of a shotgun. A number maybe upwards of 80 or more per hour. Some of these Perseus, Tilly, are actually so bright they can leave vapor trails in the sky. And when you take a pair of binoculars and watch them, they look like a 3D electrified tube in the sky. But most of those burn up in the atmosphere.
Wow. Let me understand this now, because it's coming together in a way I'm not too happy about. You're telling me that this week on the 11th, we're going to have a total eclipse. Right. You're telling me that we're going to see some new meteors that we have not seen before. You're telling me that there are thousands of new comets out there. You're telling me, you haven't even mentioned the giant solar flares that we've been having.
There's more to come, yeah.
Which is, and wow, I mean, what is going on in the sky? It is beyond belief. And here we have the Aztecs into their calendar. They're predicting the end of the world. So is it possible that we won't get to Friday the 13th?
You never know. And I would hope we do. I mean, I'll be optimistic of my wish and my desire. But I would imagine a good answer to this phenomenon is at one time in the year, it seems you're right. So many phenomenon in the sky going on by whatever planet creator there probably is out there, orchestrating something in the sky.
Well, apparently something is coming to an end, whatever it is, whether it's the world or something else. Everything works in cycles, and we've got everything coming at once. So is that unheard of? I mean, you're the astronomer here.
It's not necessarily unheard of. I think there's a lot more education, of course, what we're trying to do right now, to educate people as to at least how to enjoy some of these phenomena. But if we think back to the passage of the Great Comet of Halley back in 1910, there were obviously not the amount of information, no internet, no mass communication. Then the tail of that particular comet literally passed over the Earth in May of 1910, and there were carnival barkers of sorts selling all kinds of anti-eclipse pills, and again, merchandising was in high fashion then. But it seems to go in spurts. But I would agree with you. It seems like right now we're kind of like moving toward a peak in all kinds of activity. And literally, in so many words, all hell breaking loose.
Wow. One thing that we haven't touched on, I want to go to phone calls if I may.
Sure.
And that is, in fact, let me give those phone numbers right now. West of the Rockies, it's 800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 800-821-5033. First-time callers, 775-727-1222, and the wild card number, 775-727-1295. Okay, you told me when we talked the other day that the back of the Earth, right, there are, what we used to, I forgot what it was, comets or meteors, but you were saying there was something at the back end of the Earth.
Well, asteroids that are flying through space.
Asteroids.
Okay. A friend of mine here in Arizona, the University of Arizona, Jim Scotty, who works in conjunction with an important project here called Spacewatch, which their mission, among others, is to track the inbound bolt out of the blue, so to speak, that comes from space. A small asteroid or asteroidal-like body. Like here in Arizona, we have a famous meteor crater that many visitors and, of course, locals know well. Just the east of Flagstaff, called the Great Barringer Meteor Crater. It was formed, the 2 mile or so in diameter crater, incredibly hilly, by an object only some 200 feet in diameter, according to the best guesstimates, about 50,000 years ago, traveling at an incredible 50 or 60,000 miles an hour. Now, what about these small objects that size that our nighttime cameras may not pick up, or the broad daylight? And obviously, when we have this particular eclipse, I'm sure, not everybody gets to see darkness in the middle of the day, it's a grand opportunity, and it used to be for the astronomers before the advent of spacecraft, to study the areas around the sun. Also, the potential for these objects hitting us in space is on the inference.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that question. What about all the various, telescopes we have in the sky that have been formed so well? Do you think perhaps that they might in some way get knocked out? And between the solar flares and the eclipse and everything else that's going on, Do you think they're endangered? Really, a brand new one that just went in the sky, last week, 2 days ago?
The answer is yes. And the Chandra Space Observatory that was recently launched, I have a very incredible factual story that back in, I'm sure it's either 1993 or 94, the date isn't as important as the event though, that the astronauts aboard the Mir space station during a previous passage in the Perseid meteor shower were actually struck in space, in orbit obviously, by some debris from the Perseid meteor shower. Tiny as it might have been, it woke them up and did some minor damage, they say, to one of the solar panels or the hull of the spacecraft. Now, the big Leonid shower again this November, and the last year's prognosticators said that we might have our